If you want to live the longest, healthiest, most active life possible, are you better off being a carnivore or are you better off being a vegetarian? Let's take a look at the science and see what that tells us. If eating were a sport, then every human on the planet would be playing on a team. And we would all be trying to score calories. But the winners wouldn't be the ones who scored the most calories. The winners would be the team that scored the kind of calories that allowed them to play the game the longest. Modern agriculture has changed the game of eating. Early players had to burn up most of the calories they scored each day, simply finding enough calories to play the game one more day. But most modern players can easily score as many calories as they want with very little effort. In fact, about 75% of them are literally overloaded with extra calories that make it harder to keep playing the game. And there's no shortage of recruiters attempting to get us to join their team. There's the Keto team, the vegan team, the Paleo team, the Mediterranean team, and the list goes on. And then there's the food manufacturers constantly bombarding us with shiny advertising, recruiting us to the team who thinks winning is measured in sales, not lifespan. Let's take a look at what the science says about the two extremes, eating nothing but plants or nothing but meat. First, we'll look at nothing but plants. A number of doctors like John McDougall and Stephen Gundry have recommended a whole food, plant-based diet as the optimal diet for good health. These two prominent advocates both have different recommendations about which plants you should consume because of the hazards that they recognize with certain plants. And many advocates of a plant-based diet point to the National Geographic report that identified what they called blue zones around the world, where they found the highest population of people who had lived to 100 years old and beyond. There were several common factors shared among these blue zone locations which appeared to be part of their secret to longevity. And when it came to diet, they all used some version of a whole food, plant-based diet. Meat was part of their diet as well, but it appeared to be at very low levels. I've included a link in the description to a study that analyzed data from almost 400 different studies conducted on vegan diets. This study concluded that a vegan diet might be beneficial for weight reduction among healthy people. There's weak evidence that a vegan diet might be associated with lower risk of mortality and cancer incidence, but a higher risk of fractures. A vegan diet was also effective in improvement of some cardiometabolic markers like LDL cholesterol and fasting glucose in persons with diabetes. At the same time, a vegan diet may have adverse effects on HDL cholesterol and triglyceride levels. More well-conducted prospective studies are warranted to strengthen the evidence on the health effects of a vegan diet and to expand it on further health outcomes. There are a number of doctors like Dr. Anthony Chaffee and Dr. Paul Mason who point out the dangers of eating plants. They make the case that every living thing on the planet, including plants, have a self-defense mechanism that prevents them from being eaten. Let's listen to a clip of Dr. Chaffee speaking about some of the hazards associated with plants.
The title of my talk is Plants Are Trying to Kill You, which of course is a very provocative title and is meant to be. Botany 101, plants are living organisms and they like to stay living organisms. If you eat them, they die. And so they have defenses just like any other living organism. And while animals can run away or fight back, plants can't. And so they use a lot of different things, but poison is one of their main deterrents. They use these defense chemicals to poison the animals that are trying to eat them, and they have hundreds of different ones geared towards different animals, insects, and pathogens that are trying to eat them. This is why most plants in the world are inedible. We sort of know this intuitively. If you got lost in the woods here and you ran out of food, you wouldn't be able to eat any random plant. Most of them would make you very sick. So here are just a few sort of categories of the ways that plants defend themselves. They use lectins as something that people are gaining more interest in, but there's tons of different kinds of lectins. There's 2,500 different plants use cyanide that we know of. There's different various toxins, phytates, tannins, oxalates, hormone disruptors, nutrient blockers, things that make you very sensitive to light. And nightshades we've known about for thousands of years, and yet for some reason we're still eating these things. 22 years ago, when I was taking cancer biology at the University of Washington in Seattle, we went over how plants use defense chemicals in order to defend themselves, but we were looking at this from a cancer perspective, so we were looking at carcinogens. And we learned 20 years ago that Brussels sprouts alone had over 136 identified human carcinogens in them. And that just, white cap, I'm telling you, this is why kids, no one likes Brussels sprouts, right? And that's why, right? That bad taste, that bitter taste is your brain and your tongue, which are sophisticated machines, and they can tell you, like, hey, this is bad for you, spit it out. So if you.
Well, it looks like there's both positive and negative data when it comes to what happens if all we do is eat plants. So now let's take a look at what happens if all we do is eat meat. When it comes to finding scientific studies about strictly meat diets, commonly called a carnivore diet, there isn't a ton of data, and that's probably because this is a fairly new diet protocol. Advocates of this diet will point to the Eskimo or Inuit population as a group of people who have lived on a primarily meat-based diet for a long time. According to an article in Science Focus, their diet isn't any healthier than a modern Western diet. If we compare rates of heart disease and stroke, the Eskimos have about the same rate as we see in the rest of the Western populations. In contrast, Harvard University did a study in 2021 on over 2,000 participants who practiced a carnivore diet for 6 months. They found some very positive results that would potentially lead to better long-term health. There are a number of high-profile people like Jordan Peterson who have reported some astonishing benefits from adopting this diet. Probably the most impressive reported results are the reduction in inflammation, reduction of body fat, and elimination of autoimmune disorders. One thing we can say with certainty is that eating only meat is one way to eliminate almost every food from your diet that might cause some kind of allergic or autoimmune reaction. There are very few people who have a bad physical reaction to eating meat. There are also plenty of people in the medical community who warn of potential problems with this method of eating. An article published by the Cleveland Clinic says that the carnivore diet is super low in fiber, which will cause a lot of constipation, and that the risks of that can become much more serious than a failure to poop. Let's listen to part of a discussion between Joe Rogan and Dr. Rhonda Patrick about the carnivore diet.
Who wrote a 30-page paper on the carnivore diet?
Well, I definitely have concerns. I think that the most important question really is what is attracting someone to try such a very restrictive diet. It seems as though a lot of people are drawn to it because they have some sort of autoimmune problem. It's really important when you have like something that leads to an effect to understand the mechanism. If you look at published studies on people that eat low-carb, high-protein diets, what's pretty common is that there's changes that happen in a variety of different endocrine factors, like you're less insulin, that's changing your satiety and hunger hormones, leptin and ghrelin, and people become more satiated and they actually eat less. And this has been shown in multiple studies. So people actually eat less when they're having a higher protein diet. Well, So I think there's published evidence to kind of explain that, and also there's people saying, yeah, I eat less. So that's an important point because one thing that's really known to affect autoimmunity is caloric restriction and fasting. So I think that understanding that some of these mechanisms that are at play and that fasting itself and caloric restriction both have been shown to improve autoimmunity, you may be tapping into something there. When it comes to someone just eating meat, and there's been human intervention studies, when you take a human that goes from a high fiber diet to a low fiber, high protein, or vice versa, you get changes in their gut microbiome. And some of these species of putrefactive bacteria have been linked to colon cancer.
So if we eliminate all the hype from either side of this argument, we can simply look at the data and make a decision about what will serve us best when it comes to living a longer, healthier, more productive life. A study published in the International Journal of General Medicine maybe sums it up best. This study showed that meat intake is positively associated with life expectancy at a national level. The underlying reasons may be that meat not only provides energy, but also provides complete nutrients to the human body. From the evolutionary point of view, meat has arguably been an indispensable component in the human diet for millions of years, which is evidenced genetically by meat digesting enzymes and digestive tract anatomy. The complete nutritional profile of meat and human adaptation to meat eating have enabled humans to gain many physical benefits, including greater life expectancy. The study concluded that meat intake should be incorporated into our diets to improve life expectancy. Well, when you look at the science, it doesn't look like there's a clear winning team between eating nothing but plants or eating nothing but meat. But maybe like most sports, the team that has a good variety of winning plays is most likely to have the best shot at being the winner. I hope this information was useful. And like always, thanks for watching.